Business in the City, the podcast of entrepreneurs without borders. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of the podcast Business in the City. Today, I have the honor to meet Mia Eisenstadt. She will explain more about what she does as a researcher and as a founder, because she's doing both. She's specialized in child and teenage psychology, as she owns a PhD, and parents' well-being. So she founded a couple of projects that I think are quite interesting to look at. So welcome, Mia, to this podcast. Very happy to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So could you please describe your background in a few sentences so we know you better as a beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, I've always tried to sort of have one foot in the research world and one foot in the entrepreneurship world. So, in my 20s, I founded a company called Rios, and with many other people, and we set it up in different countries. And I was responsible for the UK office, and then later the European office. And then I did a PhD in psychology, like you mentioned, and really passionate about child well-being, family well-being, and dad's well-being. And so, just a couple of years ago, I set up a social app that you can find on the App Store called Fatherly. And the idea of the app is to provide community, but also information and resources for dads to help them with becoming a parent if they're a new parent, or some of the challenges that can occur along the way with parenting, getting support and evidence-based information.
How is going this project about fathers and fatherhood and dad's well-being?
It's going really well. It's interesting because it's still an area which some people don't recognize is important. So when it comes to family well-being, the focus is very much on the mother, and that is completely justified because mums are obviously the ones that go through pregnancy and birth. But it's really important for dads to be informed and supported as well. So, the less stressed that dads are, research finds that that has a better impact on children's well-being and potentially could have a positive impact on mum's health as well. But at the same time, there are lots of people that are really passionate about supporting dads with their parenting and mental health. So it's really great to be part of that kind of wider ecology. And I think we're the only, there's lots of social forums for dads, but we're the only social app for dads currently. So it's nice we've been sort of breaking new ground, and that's been fun.
By the way, I forgot to say that you're based in UK, right? So you are doing all the work from UK. About this project linked to fatherhood, why did you decide to start this project in the first place? What was the main reason?
Yeah, the main reason is that there just has been a lack of support for dads. And since the pandemic and just generally in society, dads are having a bigger role in the parenting of their children. In some families, dads are the main caregiver, and mum is the one who maybe works full time. And at the same time, a lot of our kind of resources and adverts, they haven't reflected the fact that dads sometimes play an equal role to mums, or sometimes in childcare they play the bigger role. So we need, and parenting isn't easy. There's lots of, we all make mistakes, and there's lots of things that we have to learn all the time to be able to support children. And depending on their interests, depending on their problems, depending on their learning difficulties, depending on their mental health needs, depending on their kind of gifts and talents. So there's always things that as parents we have to kind of learn. And so it felt like there was a good opportunity to provide information and resources to dads. And the other thing is that sort of going through kind of life as a parent, there's loads of difficult times. So there's things like baby loss when a baby is lost either during pregnancy or birth. which are very painful for both the mum and the dad. But so dads might be feeling feelings of grief. There's also birth trauma during a birth where a dad can witness the mum kind of almost lose her life or go through a lot of pain and severe complications, and it can be very traumatic for both the mum and the dad. And that's at the same time they're going to be looking after a new baby, so they really need to be thinking about their mental health and having support around their mental health and their well-being at the same time as sort of becoming new parents or having a new baby in the house. And then there's also things, dads can suffer from stress at work, from dad guilt, so from feeling like they're not being a good husband, or they're not being a good partner, or they're not being a good dad because they're so busy at work. Equally, if they then spend more time at home, they can feel like they're not achieving or not included. And mums can feel many of these issues as well. But sometimes, because of the expectation on men to be sort of tough and tough it out and not talk about their feelings, sometimes there's a real need for men to have more mental health support, and these sort of changes in family life can be kind of real important points in which mental health of dads and the family can kind of get better or worse. So there's a good points for intervention for dads to get support at those times.
How many subscribers do you have? Like, is it? Can you give us an idea of the success of this app?
So
Of
we
this
have
app, sorry.
over 3,000 dads on the app, and we've got dads from kind of over 80 countries. Um, so and the apps, we've mainly been sort of doing organic growth this year, and we're seeing sort of dads.
And what do you do exactly? Do you teach them? Do you organize workshops? What do you do exactly through
No,
the app?
it's a social app, so dads can kind of create a profile. They can make friends using their dad finder. They can add friends. They can ask questions and get comments from other dads. They can read.
Get
Um,
advice.
exactly. We do have experts and therapists on the app. So if people want to have kind of sessions with a specialist or a coach, they can do as well.
That's great.
We do run workshops and webinars on managing stress and communication as a parent, periodically.
That's great. I'd like to come back to the very first project that you started as quite an early young entrepreneur in your 20s, you said. It's called Rios Partners. Could you please talk about this first company that you started, and are you still running it? How was it? Was it easy to launch? What did you learn through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was very exciting, actually, founding a company after university. So I went to South Africa to do a master's in social anthropology, or to do research for that master's. And at the end of my time working there on projects, I realized that I needed a way to fund myself and my activities, that I couldn't just do charity work, that I needed a more sort of sustainable way of operating. At the time, I was applying for funding for local children's organizations in a black township, and at the end of that period there, I sort of run out of money, and I thought, well, actually, there's some, I need to look at other options. So then when I came back to England, I was finishing up my master's and I was doing some consultancy work. And then there was the opportunity to be part of a group of people that were founding Rios Partners um, in South Africa, actually. So there was a group of us. We went to South Africa and we kind of mapped out what a new company could look like. And the idea of the company was to bring together different stakeholders, business, and civil society and government, to work on complex challenges. So it could be things like climate change, it could be things like peace and reconciliation in Cyprus, it could be sustainable development. So we worked on lots of any kind of social or environmental issue which people wanted to create a systemic change around. So not just sort of small piecemeal actions, but a larger systemic approach. Yeah, it was a really interesting journey. I think I was the youngest there of the nine of us that met in South Africa, in Cape Town. And it was a little bit difficult for me because I'd worked in consultancy, and I'd done a master's, and I'd done university, but and all those are really, really valuable. And I love that I chose those routes in my life. I know this is a time where some people are kind of questioning whether university makes good economic sense. But for me, it was a really valuable set of skills. But what I didn't learn was entrepreneurship and kind of meetings and negotiation and marketing and all those other skills that are really essential in business. And so I think, I kind of had strong analytical skills. I had hard work. I could write really good essays. I could do research. I could interview stakeholders. I could organize projects. I could do lots of things. But I think, as a young entrepreneur, I definitely was at a disadvantage.
So you founded one company, let's say 20 years ago, and another one just only a few years ago. Now, what was the main difference that you experienced between founding some time ago and just a little time ago, if you see what I mean? Did you learn
Yeah.
something along the way as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, definitely. So in the middle of that time, I did my PhD, and I think a PhD really teaches you to do everything yourself. Obviously, within reason, and you're building on the research that's been done before you. But beyond the kind of support of your supervisors, there's a lot you have to do yourself. And I think when we set up Rios in the UK, it was much more of a team effort, and so we had kind of different specialized roles. Whereas I think with Fatherly, I have done a bit of everything, and so that's and I think it gives you, the older you get, maybe you have the confidence that you can learn kind of most things. It's funny because I'm a mum, and my son is 14, so he would understand some of the kind of slang that is around today. And I was thinking, I was asking him, there's a few words like riz and no cap, and these kind of words, and I was thinking, wow, like I've got to that age where I'm now too old to use those words, or I just don't know what they mean at first. Whereas I think up until this point, I always kind of had an awareness. I love music, so I was always aware of kind of new words and slang. And then I thought, now I'm now it's beyond me. So there's certain things that you can't really learn so naturally, I think, as you get older. But I think, as you get older as well, you also realize you can have the confidence that anything that you don't know, you can learn. I mean, it takes time, and that's the problem. But I do feel like more optimistically, like if you want to learn SEO, if you want to learn kind of, Facebook marketing, if you want to learn,
Especially in this digital era, right?
yeah, PR works. And obviously, yeah, so, we can use ChatGPT, and that can help us as well with kind of like solving problems and doing things on your own faster.
So, what made you start as an entrepreneur when you could have just simply stay as a psychologist and just, being like a corporate in the mind? But it seems like you are more of a founder, someone who likes to act. So, can you explain why? Because many don't start businesses, you know what I mean, in your field. So, why did you decide to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I think I get quite inspired by researchers and psychologists where they have created some kind of product, not so much from a commercial point of view, but just in terms of like making the findings and learning from science and research available to the general public. I think there's so much, like magical and important knowledge in academia that doesn't make its way out into society. And I just think it's such a shame. So for me, like sharing information and knowledge is really important. But I also think, I think doing things with other people is fun, and it's good to be kind of out in the real world, I think, as much as possible, and trying to understand kind of the world from different people's point of view. Um, yeah, and I think, business sort of gets a bad name, but actually I think it is a good way of actually interacting with people and understanding what people want, which isn't easy. But I think as a researcher, you're not really interested so much in kind of what people want and trends, because you're looking at kind of bigger meta questions. So yes, whereas I think businesses kind of tries to go more with trends and understand kind of where things are going, and what people want and what people kind of want to do with life. And I think, research can do that, but it often doesn't. It's very narrow focus. Um, and that's, part of the strength of research, because you can rigorously learn something that then can be generalized and can be true.
So, as an entrepreneur, what is now your dream outcome? What do you want to achieve? What's the final goal?
Yeah, so I think I have a few different ones. So I would really like to help parents that are in poverty, because there's just a when parents are in poverty, there's and not accessing services, there's so much strain that then the children experience, the family experience. It's a real strain for parents' mental health. So that's something that I would like to kind of make a difference with. At the same time, I want the app to grow, and I want to sort of increase the visibility of the app so that any sort of dad that is asking kind of psychological questions about parenting, so do I need to reparent myself? Like, what do I need to help my own mental health so that I can help the mental health of my child? Where can I get support for my mental health so that there's more understanding of fatherly as a potential place to support dads with their kind of mental health and the sort of existential questions they have through family life, which comes up a lot.
That's great. So, would you like to? We are getting to the end of this episode. So, I wanted to ask you if there's anything you would like to share with our audience, maybe something to recommend to entrepreneurs, or I don't know if you have a book you want to share or a name, whatever. What would you like to add?
So thank you. Thanks so much. So my favorite book linked to entrepreneurship and my journey is it's called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And I know Ryan Holiday is a producer of lots of books and information in his own right. But sometimes when I get stuck on my journey, where I'm confused, or something hasn't turned out how I wanted it to be, and you kind of either have to start again or start in a different direction. I find I regularly go back to that book and I reread it. So I really recommend it for anyone as kind of a like the entrepreneur's self-help book. If ever anything goes wrong and it doesn't have to be entrepreneurship. It could be, if you work in a different kind of career and just having, you have sometimes there's big ups and then there's big downs. And after the big down, I think that's a really good book to get started again.
That's great. Really looking forward to discovering this book. Thank you so much. So, what can we wish you now? Great success with your app, maybe changing lives around you, transforming lives, making maybe dads feeling much better and bringing more happiness to the world.
Oh, this sounds absolutely lovely, Emily. Like, thanks so much
Does
for
it sound like a good plan?
that. Sounds amazing. Yeah, incredible.
Okay. So I would like to thank you very much for coming to this podcast today, and we wish you the best of success, and talk to you soon.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Business in the City, the podcast of entrepreneurs without borders.